Most people think their salary is protecting them. That belief is exactly why they're trapped. You can earn more than your parents ever imagined, live in a better house, drive a better car, and still be one missed paycheck away from panic. Not because you failed, because the system didn't want you free. It wanted you predictable. This isn't about working harder. It's about understanding why money keeps moving through you, never staying with you. Once you see the mechanism, the illusion collapses. And once it collapses, you can't unsee it. The salary trap, the comfortable prison you call security. You don't wake up because you're disciplined. You wake up because your body has been trained, not by motivation, but by repetition. The same hour, the same commute, the same calendar, the same company badge, the same small surrender you call routine. It feels like adulthood. It feels like being responsible. It feels like stability. And that is the first lie the system sells you, that stability is the same thing as freedom. The salary trap doesn't start with poverty. It starts with a good life. A salary that looks impressive compared to your parents' generation. Benefits. A decent apartment. A car that doesn't break down. 2-week pay cycles that keep everything running smoothly. On paper, you are doing well. In your bank account, you are fragile. The weird part is you can't explain why. You're earning more than you ever expected, yet you feel poorer than ever. That is not an accident. It's architecture. Here's the mechanism. The system doesn't pay you and then let you decide. It pays you and siphons first. It fragments your income into invisible channels before you ever experience it as power. Rent takes its cut. Food takes its cut. Car payment, insurance, gas, subscriptions, utilities. Each one is small enough to feel normal, but together they form a net. You don't feel robbed because you don't feel the loss as one event. You feel it as a series of reasonable expenses. And because the money leaves in pieces, your brain never experiences the truth. You're not building wealth. You're maintaining a lifestyle. This is the trap's first weapon, the illusion of prosperity through fragmentation. You have a roof, a car, a phone, and a few comforts. That comfort is not wealth, it's sedation. It is just enough to stop you from asking dangerous questions. You are not starving, so you assume you're safe. You are not unsafe, so you assume you're free. Meanwhile, you are living on a timer that resets every 2 weeks. A salary is not a stream of power. It is a leash with a schedule. The system doesn't need you broke in the obvious way. It needs you dependent in the subtle way. Dependence creates predictability. Predictability creates control. And control is the real product being bought and sold. You are not a worker. You are a revenue stream for your landlord, your bank, your insurer, your car company, your subscription stack. The entire ecosystem that profits when your paycheck is already promised before it arrives. The genius of the salary trap is psychological. It doesn't threaten you, it comforts you. It gives you just enough to keep you quiet. You don't feel like a prisoner because the cell is furnished. You don't feel controlled because you chose the furniture, but the choice is staged. The system doesn't say, "We are going to keep you from building wealth." It says, "Upgrade your life." It offers you a nicer apartment, a nicer car, a nicer lifestyle, each upgrade framed as success. And because your identity craves progress, you accept. That is how the trap tightens without force. Look at what happens when money becomes fragmented. You stop seeing money as leverage. You start seeing money as a flow to be managed. You become a manager of obligations, not an owner of assets. Your financial intelligence becomes the ability to keep the machine running, not the ability to escape the machine. You learn how to pay bills. You don't learn how to build independence. You become excellent at surviving the system while staying inside it. This is why so many professionals live with a quiet dread, not because they hate their jobs, because they know, deep down, they can't leave. They can fantasize about quitting, about starting something, about taking a risk, but the moment they imagine it, their stomach drops. That feeling is not fear of change. That feeling is the body recognizing captivity. If the paycheck stops, the lifestyle collapses. If the lifestyle collapses, identity collapses. The system doesn't just own your time, it owns your sense of self. The salary trap also weaponizes comparison. If you earn more than most people around you, you assume you're winning. You assume you're safe. You assume you're ahead. But income ranking is not freedom ranking. The person earning $85,000 can be as trapped as the person earning $45,000 if both have the same gap, a tiny margin between income and required expenses. Freedom isn't your salary number. Freedom is the distance between you and collapse. Ask one question and you'll see the cell bars immediately. If you quit tomorrow, how many months could you survive without borrowing, without selling assets, without panicking? If the answer is less than 3 months, you are not secure. You are merely comfortable. And comfort is the most effective prison because it convinces you there is nothing to escape from. The salary trap is not a conspiracy in the cartoon sense. It's the natural outcome of incentives. Institutions profit when you make predictable payments. Markets profit when you consume identity upgrades. Employers profit when you fear losing stability. None of them need to hate you. They just need you to stay dependent. And the system becomes sophisticated because it doesn't attack you head-on. It trains you slowly until the idea of leaving feels irrational. Once you see this, you can't unsee it. The goal is not to romanticize quitting your job. The goal is to stop confusing income with wealth and to stop confusing comfort with freedom. The salary trap isn't just about money. It's about the psychological trade you made without noticing. You traded optionality for stability, and you called it adulthood. Fragmentation, how your paycheck gets spent before you even touch it. Most people think money disappears because they're bad with it. They blame willpower. They blame discipline. They blame impulse spending. That explanation is comforting because it makes the problem personal and solvable with motivation. The truth is colder. Your paycheck is designed to arrive already defeated. The system doesn't pay you in a way that gives you power. It pays you in a way that keeps you in motion. Look closely at a typical professional income cycle. It hits your account every 2 weeks. Not monthly, not quarterly, not annually. 2 weeks is not a random choice. 2 weeks is short enough to create constant urgency and long enough to feel normal. You are always near the next reset, always near the next rescue. You don't build a fortress on 2-week intervals. You build a treadmill. Then comes the fragmentation. The paycheck lands, and immediately it gets sliced into obligations that feel unavoidable. Rent or mortgage takes the biggest bite. Food, commuting, car payment, insurance, utilities, phone, internet, subscriptions, debt repayments, and the quiet leaks you've normalized. By the time you feel your income, most of it is already assigned. This is not merely budgeting. This is pre-commitment. Your money is spoken for by contracts you signed in calmer moments. Here's the psychological trick. When money leaves in small, familiar pieces, your brain doesn't register crisis. It registers normal life. It registers adulthood. A $1,200 rent payment feels standard. A $140 utility bill feels reasonable. A $120 subscription bundle feels small. A $550 car stack feels necessary. And because each expense is defensible on its own, you never experience the total picture. You never experience the fact that you are working to feed a structure you do not own. Fragmentation also protects your self-image. You don't feel poor because you have things. You don't feel trapped because you're not starving. You feel like you're doing fine. The system gives you enough comfort to keep you from confronting the bigger question. If you're earning this much, why aren't you accumulating power? The answer is simple. Accumulation requires surplus. Surplus requires a gap, and the system is optimized to shrink your gap to near zero. This is why people can earn high salaries and still feel cornered. They think the solution is more income, but if the structure remains, more income just increases the scale of the same pattern. You get a raise, and the system offers you upgrades. Your rent rises, your car improves, your consumption expands, your commitments grow. You don't feel richer, you feel maintained. Your stress stays constant because the gap stays constant. In economics, they call it lifestyle inflation. In reality, it's a containment strategy. Not because some villain designed it, but because human psychology is predictable. We interpret progress as upgrading visible life, not as increasing invisible independence. A higher salary triggers a higher identity. A higher identity triggers higher spending. Higher spending triggers higher dependency. The chain is automatic. The system fragments your paycheck, and then it fragments your attention. You become busy managing bills, busy optimizing small savings, busy chasing promotions, busy negotiating 2% raises, busy comparing credit card points, busy looking for budget hacks. It keeps you focused on the micro so you never attack the macro. You become a technician inside your own captivity. And the worst part, it feels like responsibility. Paying bills on time feels like adulthood. Keeping the machine running feels like competence. You feel proud because you're handling life. Meanwhile, the real measure of competence, how long you can live without permission, remains low. If you want to break the fragmentation spell, you must force your brain to see the truth as one event. The system wins when you experience money as a series of unrelated costs. You break it by experiencing your finances as a single structure. Not rent plus groceries plus car, but fixed obligations versus optionality. You need a different lens, not budgeting categories, but freedom categories. Here is the simplest lens that cuts through all fragmentation. How much of your income is already promised before it arrives? That number tells you your dependency level. If 90% of your after-tax income is allocated to fixed obligations, you are not a high earner. You are a high-throughput worker. Money flows through you. It does not stay with you. You are not an accumulator. You are a conduit. The salary trap thrives on this because it makes you controllable. If you have no surplus, you can't take risks. You can't start a business. You can't invest aggressively. You can't negotiate with confidence. You can't walk away from bad environments. You become grateful for things that should be baseline: stability, benefits, predictability. Gratitude becomes a collar. This is why fragmentation isn't just financial, it's political. It controls your behavior. A population living paycheck to paycheck is easier to govern, easier to market to, easier to manipulate, easier to sell debt to, easier to sell upgrades to. Again, no conspiracy is required. Incentives do the work. Once you see fragmentation as a weapon, you stop asking, "How do I spend less on groceries?" and start asking, "How do I reduce pre-committed obligations?" You stop chasing income as a status metric and start chasing the gap as a freedom metric. Because the gap is where your future self is built. Without a gap, you are not building a life, you are renting one. Golden handcuffs. Why every raise makes you harder to escape. The cruelest part of the salary trap is that it doesn't punish you for succeeding. It rewards you in a way that locks you in deeper. That's why it's called golden handcuffs. The handcuffs are shiny, people envy them. And because the gold looks like success, you don't notice you're wearing restraints. This is how it happens. You get a job. You feel relief. You tell yourself you made it. Then the first adaptation begins. You move into a slightly nicer place because you can. You get a better car because you deserve it. You sign contracts with fixed monthly payments because the monthly payment feels manageable. Manageable is the word that keeps you trapped. Manageable means you can keep paying if the paycheck keeps coming. Every time you accept a higher fixed obligation, you reduce your exit options. You might not think in those terms because you're not trained to value optionality. You're trained to value progression. Upward movement. Visible upgrades. But freedom isn't upward movement. Freedom is the ability to stop, the ability to say no, the ability to leave. And fixed obligations are the price you pay for the illusion of progress. Raising income is not inherently bad. The problem is that most people raise obligations faster than they raise assets. They build a lifestyle that consumes the new income. Then they call it improving their life. They are improving appearances while weakening leverage. It's like upgrading the interior of a rented house while ignoring the fact you don't own the land. A promotion should increase your gap. Instead, it usually increases your consumption. And consumption is a one-way door. Once you get used to the nicer apartment, the better neighborhood, the upgraded car, the more expensive social circle, you feel pain going backward. Humans hate status loss more than they enjoy status gain. The system exploits that. Once your identity is attached to the upgraded life, leaving the job becomes psychologically terrifying, not just financially inconvenient. You're not afraid of poverty, you're afraid of demotion. That's the real lock. People don't stay in jobs they hate because they're lazy. They stay because they fear identity collapse. Their lifestyle is now their self-image. Their spending is now their status. Their obligations are now their ego. So they accept terms they would have rejected years ago. Longer hours, worse managers, toxic politics, endless meetings, soul-draining work. They tolerate it because quitting would be humiliating, not just difficult. This is why you can find CEOs and high earners who are as trapped as entry-level workers. If your expenses require you to keep earning, you are not free. A high salary with high obligations is just a bigger cage. A low salary with low obligations can sometimes be freer. The determining factor is the margin, the gap, the surplus that can be turned into assets and time. Golden handcuffs also distort your decision-making. When you need the paycheck, you become risk-averse. You stop experimenting. You stop building. You stop investing in your own ideas. Not because you lack ambition, but because you can't afford volatility. The system's goal isn't to make you poor. It's to make you stable enough to keep producing and consuming in predictable patterns. Predictability is the currency of control. Then comes the second cruelty, the raise that feels like rescue. Your company offers you $20,000 more. You feel relieved, you feel grateful, you feel like you won. But within weeks, life adjusts. Costs rise. Emergencies appear. New obligations get added. The stress level returns to baseline. This isn't bad luck, it's structural. When your financial system is built on fixed obligations, any extra income gets absorbed. You are not building resilience, you're maintaining equilibrium. Your life expands to consume whatever you earn. This is why asking, "How do I make more money?" without asking, "How do I protect the gap?" is naive. Without protection, higher income simply funds higher dependence. The system doesn't have to chase you. You chase the cage upgrades yourself. Breaking golden handcuffs requires a mental inversion. Most people optimize for comfort now and postpone freedom later. That is backwards. Freedom must be built first, because once obligations grow, freedom becomes more expensive to purchase. The earlier you protect your gap, the cheaper freedom is. The later you do it, the more brutal the trade-offs. Machiavellian logic here is simple. The person who needs less has more negotiating power. Need is weakness. Optionality is strength. If you can walk away, you can demand better terms. If you cannot walk away, you will accept whatever is offered and call it being realistic. That is how the system keeps you obedient without threats. Golden handcuffs are not broken by inspiration. They are broken by structure. You must build a life that does not require the paycheck to sustain identity. You must detach your self-image from consumption. You must learn to treat upgrades as strategic choices, not emotional rewards. The system wins when you use raises to buy comfort. You win when you use raises to buy independence. Predictability equals control. Why paycheck dependency makes you manipulable? Most people think the salary trap is about money management. It's not. It's about power. Paycheck dependency isn't just a financial condition. It's a behavioral condition. When you live paycheck to paycheck, even a large paycheck, you become predictable. And once you are predictable, you are controllable. Control doesn't require chains. It requires constraints. If your lifestyle collapses without your next paycheck, your employer has leverage. If you can't endure a few months without income, your boss doesn't need to threaten you. Your own fear does the threatening. Your mortgage does the threatening. Your car payments do the threatening. Your kids' tuition does the threatening. The system doesn't need violence. It needs your obligations. That is why the salary trap is a comfortable prison. Prisons are not defined by discomfort. They are defined by inability to leave. If you cannot leave, you are trapped, no matter how nice the cell looks. The system offers comfort as a substitute for autonomy. You receive a stable salary in exchange for a stable obedience. You call it a fair trade because you don't see the power dynamics. Look at what paycheck dependency does to your choices. You avoid conflict at work because conflict risks job loss. You accept extra tasks because refusal risks being labeled difficult. You tolerate disrespect because confrontation risks instability. You don't start a side business because the risk of failure feels like a threat to survival. You don't invest in education that could change your trajectory because you're busy paying for the education you already bought. You become a manager of your own fear. The system profits from this. Landlords profit when tenants are stable. Banks profit when borrowers keep paying. Insurance companies profit when policies auto-renew. Subscription businesses profit when customers don't cancel. Employers profit when employees stay. Every institution prefers predictable consumers and predictable workers. The salary trap turns you into both. This is why the trap intensifies with time. The longer you stay, the more your life is designed around the paycheck. Your social circle becomes tied to your lifestyle. Your identity becomes tied to your role. Your calendar becomes filled with obligations. Leaving becomes not just a financial risk, but a social risk and an identity risk. And the human brain will choose familiar captivity over uncertain freedom almost every time. There is a statistic, often repeated. A majority of professionals couldn't survive more than a month without a paycheck. The precise percentage can vary by country and survey, but the principle is what matters. Most people are one interruption away from crisis. That means security is a narrative, not a reality. If your survival depends on an external permission slip arriving every 2 weeks, you are not secure. You are merely insured against panic until the insurance fails. Paycheck dependency also blocks wealth building. Wealth requires patience, risk tolerance, and long-term allocation. But when you're living close to the edge, you can't think long-term. You think in short intervals. 2 weeks, next month, next bill. Your brain becomes a survival machine. Survival brains do not build empires, they maintain cages. This is why many people chase promotions instead of building assets. Promotions feel safe. Assets feel uncertain. Promotions require compliance and performance within the system. Assets require building something outside it. Promotions reward you with more income in exchange for more responsibility. Assets reward you with more independence in exchange for more risk. When you're trapped, you pick the path that reduces immediate anxiety, even if it increases long-term dependency. That is not stupidity. That is human psychology responding to constraints. A Machiavellian reading is blunt. Whoever controls your necessities controls your behavior. If your necessities are controlled by a paycheck, then the paycheck controls you. Your employer becomes a gatekeeper. The job becomes a choke point. And choke points are where power accumulates. The system doesn't need to forbid entrepreneurship. It just needs to make you too exhausted and too financially constrained to attempt it. It doesn't need to ban investment. It just needs to keep you with no surplus. It doesn't need to censor your ambitions. It just needs to keep you dependent. This is why the first goal isn't become rich. The first goal is become less controllable. The first victory is optionality. Optionality is not a vibe. It's a balance sheet reality. Months of expenses saved, obligations reduced, surplus redirected into assets. Once you have that, your psychological posture changes. You stop negotiating like someone who needs permission. You start negotiating like someone who can walk away. That shift alone can change your career trajectory, your relationships, and your decisions. If you want a simple test of whether you are controlled, ask, can you say no? Can you refuse a promotion? Can you refuse extra work? Can you leave a toxic environment? Can you take a pay cut to pursue something meaningful? If the answer is no, then the paycheck is not paying you, it is renting you. The salary trap survives because people confuse comfort with freedom. They confuse benefits with power. They confuse a stable income with a stable future. In reality, the most dangerous financial position is a high-income life with low optionality, because it feels safe while it is fragile. It feels successful while it is dependent. It feels normal while it is a prison. Breaking the trap begins when you stop measuring success by income and start measuring it by controllability. The less controllable you are, the more you can shape your life. The more controllable you are, the more your life will be shaped by the system's incentives. That is the real game. The escape blueprint, gap, assets, and optionality. The salary trap is sophisticated, but it's not magical. It isn't a law of physics. It's a structure built from contracts, habits, identity needs, and predictable psychology. Anything built can be dismantled, but you don't dismantle it with motivation. You dismantle it with mechanics. The first step is conceptual. Stop confusing income with wealth. Income is a flow. Wealth is a stockpile. Income disappears when the job stops. Wealth remains when the job stops. If you have a $200,000 salary but no savings, no investments, and no assets, you are not wealthy. You are a high-paid dependent. If you have $50,000 in savings and investments, you have a slice of freedom, even if your salary is modest. This distinction alone changes everything, because it forces you to face a brutal truth. Most people are not building wealth. They are renting comfort. Once you accept that, you move to the core mechanic, the gap. Freedom comes from the gap between what you earn and what you require. Not what you earn and what you spend when you feel like it. what you require. The salary trap is designed to make your required expenses catch up to your income. Your mission is to stop that catch-up. You do that by keeping required expenses intentionally lower than your income, even as income rises. This feels backward to people trained by social comparison, but it is the only way to build durable power. You can think of the gap as your private army. It is the portion of your income that is not already pledged to someone else. If you have no gap, you have no army. You are defenseless. You are dependent. If you have a gap, you have options. You can invest. You can leave. You can endure. You can negotiate. You can take risks. The gap is not a number, it is leverage. Now comes the second mechanic, redirecting the gap into assets instead of obligations. Most people save a little and then reward themselves by upgrading lifestyle. That is how they lose momentum. The correct sequence is colder. First build optionality, then upgrade. That means directing your surplus into things that increase independence, emergency fund, investments, skills that increase earning ability independent of one employer, business assets, income-producing systems, or any vehicle that pays you without requiring your daily presence. Assets don't have to be glamorous. The point is not to become a finance influencer. The point is to own something that works without your permission being granted by payroll. Even small assets change the psychological game because they prove the world can pay you without a boss. That proof is power. The third mechanic is the psychological shift created by a buffer. When you have 3 to 6 months of expenses saved, something changes in your nervous system. You stop living in constant subtle fear. You stop accepting bullshit as normal. You start seeing your job as one option among many, not the foundation of your survival. You become less desperate. And desperation is what employers, markets, and institutions feed on. Optionality starves them of leverage. From a Machiavellian lens, this is the essential move. Remove your need. Need is the root of manipulation. If you need the paycheck, you can be controlled. If you don't need it, you can choose. Choice is sovereignty. Not motivational sovereignty, the real kind, where you can exit. To build that, you need a sequence, not a philosophy. Here's the sequence the salary trap hates. First, audit obligations. Not spending, obligations. Identify every recurring payment that would still exist if you lost your job tomorrow. That is your required expense base. Your goal is to reduce it. Every reduction is a liberation. Second, build the buffer. A minimum of 3 months is the first threshold. 6 months is the second. The buffer is not savings for comfort. It is savings for defiance. It exists so you can say no without panic. Third, protect the gap. When income rises, do not let obligations rise automatically. Decide upgrades deliberately. If you can't buy it twice, you can't afford it. If it increases your required expenses, it is not an upgrade, it is a chain. Fourth, convert surplus into assets. The moment your buffer is stable, you begin building income that is not tied to hours. That can be investments, a side business, a skill-based service, digital products, or any scalable system. The vehicle matters less than the principle. Money must start working without your daily presence. Fifth, build negotiation power. Optionality is not just for quitting, it's for negotiating. When you have a buffer and assets, you can demand better terms. You can change jobs from a position of strength. You can walk away from low respect. You can take calculated risks. You move from being controlled by the system to playing the system. People want a dramatic exit story, quitting tomorrow, escaping overnight, becoming instantly free. That fantasy is another trap. The real exit is quieter. You build a gap, you build a buffer, you build assets, and one day you realize the paycheck is no longer your lifeline, it's just one of your income streams. That day, you're free. Not because you made more money, but because you stopped needing permission. The salary trap's final lie is that comfort is the goal. Comfort is a sedative. Freedom is the goal. Freedom is not the ability to buy more. Freedom is the ability to choose more. And the people who break free are not smarter or luckier. They just stopped letting the system define progress. They decided that security without optionality is not security. It's a nicely decorated cage. If you understand that, you now have the only thing that matters. You can see the structure. And once you see the structure, you can build a new one. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. Power belongs to those who are least dependent. The system doesn't need to control you with fear. It controls you with comfort. Just enough stability to keep you quiet. Just enough pressure to keep you obedient. Freedom doesn't begin when you earn more. It begins the moment you no longer need permission to survive. If this made you uncomfortable, good. That discomfort is awareness breaking through habit. And once you see the trap, the next move is yours.